it's water's memory is mm, it's alive. It's like when you talk about a drop of water and a body of water, that drop of water belonged to the collective, yeah? And it separated itself in many ways. Like it can be the body of water can be an ocean, for example, or a lake or a river. And it goes into a different format from the body of water, yeah? So it goes through a process of going into the mist. Yeah, the mist is still got the water. Yeah, so and then it goes into process of lifting into the atmosphere, agglomerating itself in cloud travel. All that memory is being stored. Yes, it's really beautiful. It's like poetry in life. And then it goes somewhere from that. Yeah, it goes somewhere and drops itself as many different drops of water in a rain pouch somewhere. It's going to collect all the information of the ground, of this, that, the other, all the way down to another river, a pond, the ocean again, or it evaporates again and travels again in a different format. Yeah. So hence why you are the drop of water and the ocean. Yeah. There's no separation. The separation is the travel of knowledge that the drop of water is doing. Does that make sense? And it's collecting more knowledge to take back into that body of water. And I think it's very beautiful. I may be a bit clumsy at explaining what my mind's eye sees.
We used to play a game when I was a hike leader for an organization where we took youth on wilderness hikes,
Mm,
and we'd track water that evaporated from the ocean all the way through its memory cycles as you described. And when water gets into a being like we are humans, most of the water within us has specific structural roles such that proteins and enzymes carry about 60% water, and the bloodstream water is a totally different form of activity and memory than the water that might be within a protein or an enzyme. And then cellular water, which we call plasma, is another form of water. And my theory is that once the water gets back into the ocean, it only remembers ocean, and it stays there forever until it manages to escape at the surface, which very, very few of the individual water molecules do. But when it does escape, it seeks to go back to the structural form that it was in originally when it was first inside a structure where it obtained memories. So there's bulk memory, ocean, stream, underground water pond, even tap. But the individual water molecules have their individual memories that are freed up when they're not surrounded by other water molecules.
mm. Can I? The drop of water is the ocean too. Yeah.
Depends.
It's a microcosm of the ocean.
It actually isn't because it doesn't have the salt. And the salt in the water in the ocean keeps the water in a very specific state that is about the opposite of the EZ water, the sentient water, the fourth phase of water that Jerry Pollack had talked about.
Mm,
And so the idea that all water is the same is about as truthful as all humans are the same.
No, 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 no. I'm not saying it's the
Okay.
same. It's because obviously, as you say, it may not have that, but it has got memories. Yeah, it's got
Yes.
memory. So, uh, in essence, when it detach, it is going through a different travel. Yeah, but it's got memory. It's got the essence of. Yeah, so it may not, for example, have the salt, but it's got the imprint, the essence of within. So you pick it up and you taste it. Yeah, no, not salty. Yeah, but within there is a essence part, which I am being probably very clumsy. It's got an essence part that, if you were to study it deeply, a little bit like homeopathy, yeah, it's the essence in the homeopathy, for example, yeah, that cures something. But if you look within, there's hardly any of it there. It's it's minimal, but the essence is there, yeah. So the essence is that amazing memory that all water carries, and I think it does so here, and it does so in its outer travel, um, away from the planet. Yeah, I think it's one of the most beautiful elements. Yeah, uh, it's pure, it's beautiful in all its varieties. Um, but because its singularity, the drop is the ocean. Also, when it's separate, it's the drop, and when it goes back, even though it's part of that oneness, it never loses the essence of being the drop either. Yeah, that drop within the ocean is still amazingly unique, just like we
Well,
are.
in some ways, that drop and the ocean are the two ones that Walter Russell is talking about in the Universal One.
Okay, I didn't listen to it.
He wrote that in 1924. I don't think he made an audio tape of it,
or read it. This is me, gentle little me, just sharing gentle little thoughts.
which is interesting how your thoughts are confirmed by Walter Russell in 1924. It does validate what you're saying.
Yeah. By the way, beautiful expression, and I really love the poetic language aspects of it.
Thank you.
So we were talking about water and memory, and that actually helped me. Um, how to put it into words? Reclaim a lost memory that I had from my grandfather. He always used to tell me in terms of drinking water, you need to drink lots of spring water that still has the vitality in it. So that was his frequent point, and I almost had completely forgotten about that. So thank you for that, Lizzie.
You're welcome. You're welcome. And we are part of that water. Everything is, even the driest place. You go to the driest place on earth. There are specific times of the day or night or morning, depending on where it is, where water suddenly appears. Yeah, in different formats, mist format, dew format, a variety, and it's so beautiful. Um, I think there's so much beauty in life, in existence.
Yeah. I remember when I was younger, I was doing some strange experiments with some in terms of gardening and planting things. And I remember at one point I got a small vase and I tried to grow some water lilies. And what I did, I picked some um, small rocks from the river and I placed them inside that bowl, let's say. And what I've noticed after some time, I took them out, and I realized that those rocks that they were within the water, that it was growing and all of that, they actually had some small magnetic properties to it. So that was something that was always mind-boggling to me.
Mm.
And I even tried to replicate it, and it worked again. So I don't know how that actually worked.
It's beautiful. It's beautiful.
Something has to do with the organic and the synergy and all of that.
Mm, my knowledge of things is not academic. Is I don't lie. I'm not an academic. I don't have. My knowledge comes from spirit, from within, and this is probably why what Doc Time was saying, what I said goes into what that other gentleman has said in when was it 19.
Mid 1920s.
Yeah, and I didn't even know about his character, so there's no way I could have been, but it is because, there's this continuum, yeah, going on, and it is a permeation of time continuum of matter and non-matter. Well, when I say non-matter, it's almost for me like a joke because there's no such thing as non-matter. It's just
There's just doesn't matter.
it's just like non-touchable, but it is there. Yeah. Uh, it's like saying the wind doesn't exist because you can't see it, but you can feel it. Yeah, so there's no matter, but it is there. Yeah, but it is all very beautiful, poetic stuff. All of it. When you close your eyes, for example, what do you see? You see colors. You see movement. You see tunnels. You see a variety of things. But yet you have your eyes closed. You see dark as well, but that dark is projecting some colors, some stuff. Sometimes you see purples, sometimes you see different colors. Why is that? It is something that comes from your inner, yeah. So then, if you in that space of time that you're closed your eyes and you are projecting that, you can start projecting like a movie from your inner side, a happening, and that happening could have been past, present, future. Is that matter that doesn't exist palpable, but it exists? If it wouldn't exist, you wouldn't be able to visualize it. It is there. It is in existence. It is a beginning of creation of that existence, or a re-experimenting of that. When you close your eyes and you go back to when you were a child, and you remember, like Aries was saying something, or you remember a smell, a scent, a sensation from your past. Does it not exist just because it's not matter and you can't touch it now? Or does it exist because you can, even though now you have your eyes closed, smell it, feel it, experience it in the closed your eyes, but you see it like a movie? That non touchable exists. Whether people say it doesn't, I see it as it exists in in a format, and I also believe that is attached to everything that we are talking of in different levels.
It has to do with perception and having access to these extra layers, let's say, of reality. So you close your eyes and you discover other things that normally they are hidden, let's say, from normal perception.
Yeah. But everyone has, even a cat, a dog, they all have,
Yeah.
My dog, bless him, is with the angels now. When he was laying down, you could see he'd go to sleep, and he was chasing the rabbit, chasing the squirrel. In his mind, even though he wasn't deep asleep, because all I had to do was like that, and he was like, "What?" Is it snack time? So he was not deep asleep, but he was perceiving and remembering all that. um,
If I am not mistaken, when you are someone is sleeping and dreaming, they enter the REM phase of sleep, and
mhm.
the eyes they actually move. Uh,
Yeah, all sorts of fun stuff.
yeah,
I can write when I'm asleep, so it's automatic writing. It's kind of cool. Actually, I write better when I'm asleep than when I'm awake. Okay, I'll be quiet. I talk too much.
cool.
I find that if I structure my water either by putting it over shungite rock or using a device like this one, which
Mhm.
is a Wu Wei by Natural Action Technologies, but you pour the water in the top, it's got swirls and plastic balls so that the water crashing through here gets disrupted so that when it goes back into the glass, it picks up the natural order of charge from the water molecules, and that structured water when I drink it gives me much better energy and causes more urine flow. And so I can tell that it's doing something physiology wise. And I seem to be clearer on days when I use the structure than when I don't. Now I've reached the point where I will pour the water from one container pitcher to another through the device, and I store the water over shungite all the time. So there's two different mechanisms of structuring the water, but I'm not sure that they are mutually exclusive, and they might actually affect the water differently and create schizophrenic water as
Hmm,
opposed to better water. But
okay.
for me, it seems to help. I
Hmm,
try and do as best water I can, but I also avoid tap water for drinking as much as possible unless it's from a system that's coming out of a well
hmm,
or a creek. But if it's coming from the processing plant of a city somewhere, I don't want any part of it.
Yeah.
hmm,
I was actually listening yesterday to a live talk by the leading scientist from the James Webb Space Telescope, a lady called Dr. Alexandra Lockwood. Now she left NASA and she continues to be a science communicator, let's say. So she was in Cyprus. She visited Cyprus, and she gave a talk, a very interesting one,
hmm,
uh, about, let's say, the the Hubble telescope, and also, but also the latest one, the James Webb. And the key message that I was able to take out from that, while she was describing what her team was doing, because she was the first one that she was able to analyze, let's say, those images that we got some years ago from the very early universe. The key phrase that she used was the following. It had to do with structured dog. So you were talking about the water being structured, and it reminded me of that. It takes time for things to form structure. So it might sound a bit banal, let's say, but I think it captures the essence of the whole thing. So this structure and time, they seem to be well fitted together. Even we are talking about a structure in water locally inside your vessel, the one you've showed, or even in the beginning of the universe, let's say, and we are talking about stars and all of that and galaxies forming.
Absolutely. I think everything. I'm one of those like a child. I things amaze me. I see the beauty in things. Probably because the child within, is very much there. Um, I've had strokes, yeah, and you can probably see I'm today on a not too bad day at the moment. Uh, but the water, the side of me that is like that can go within, that can go within yourself and create life again, yeah, and can tell one side of the brain to start something, yeah, can go within and say, okay, here equates to there, and I'm going to start off and I'm going to create like a mechanic a spark, and I'm going to create that spark to go all the way through my brain into my eyelid that doesn't move, and it's going to move. I'm going to create it to move. That's how I recreated my face again by doing that. I'd go into the mirror and I'd create that, and I'd see the spark, and the spark would go and I'd see it go through the brain and through all the neurons and everything, go all the way there. And when it would start there, it'd go ping. Not necessarily perfect, but it would do a, and I go, okay, massage that, acknowledge, yeah. And all of it is like an ocean. Because when you see that, it's unlike when you see the divers and they're in that beautiful bit of an ocean bit where you have all the corals and all that going on, there's all that beauty. Yeah, it's a little bit like that. Is the life that one bit of coral has that, and in my mind, it's all correlated. I, I'm very clumsy at explaining this, but that's how I see it. This kind of thing everywhere. Yeah, a bit like a fractal. Yeah, and because water is energy, and it creates the movement and the spark of life, and it helps for all of that to that it's kind of difficult for me to explain what the mind's eye sometimes does. But I do believe we live in a beautiful fractal world, where I wish I had a lot more knowledge to impart, verbally sometimes. Hold on a second. I'll have to come back because the battery is going. I'll let you two talk.
It's very interesting how she uses the word fractal,
Yeah.
and the that was part of the physical discussion I had with a lot of the folks here during their visit. Was we were talking about the application of fractals into human groups, and what actually is a fractal, what are the requirements to call something fractal. And I, when they use the word mathematically and say fractal, and you look at something like the Mendelbrot set, that's not what most people mean when they say the word fractal, but that's what I think about when I hear the word fractal.
Yeah,
And there are a lot of words that have now been co opted to mean something different than what people think they mean.
Yeah.
And we don't have a consensus reality because the meaning of words isn't well defined any longer. And
yeah,
so we can be talking using the same word, but completely bypass each other on the context of what we're saying. And I've seen politicians use this to their advantage in order to get agreement on legislation that nobody in their right mind would ever agree to.
yeah,
Yeah, it's true. It's true. Because, for example, both of you have got far more technical language than I, and my language is out there. I don't have a name for it. It's just out there. It just flows with how I speak. When I see the fractal, when I speak of fractal, yes, there's the Mandelbrot. Yeah, that all that, and I see that and far more. I see the flower of life. I see all of that sort of starts. Mm, because I think that everything is like that. Um, Even though we don't necessarily see it, but you walk on the beach, you see a shell. Uh, I see fractals. I'm in the garden. I have flowers, and there's fractals. um, But yes, my technical language, as you say, everyone has got a slight way of talking, and we can sometimes misconstrue and misunderstand each other. That is very true.
yeah. I find myself sometimes parsing something that I hear or read from three, four, or even more different prisms, and then I have to make like some sort of a synthesis in order to understand it. Um, in terms of fractals, uh, that will definitely be one of those cases. And what comes out to the other side in terms of this synthesis, it's one word, self similarity. So, yeah,
I think regardless, I may be wrong, but that's how I think. Regardless of the language we use, when we are, like for example, here in this small group, we all quite understand each other, even though we have slightly different ways of putting, because, uh, so I can say it in my strange and wonderful ways, things, but you to understand it, and you can speak in your language, and I understand it in my very own way. So it depends on who's listening and sharing the information, and the recipient of it, how they understand it. So in small group like we are at the moment, I think our understanding is on a platform level, yeah, that we can understand each other, yeah, a platform level. Even though in that same platform level, there are things that we understand or believe to understand, but can only do it as far as our own consciousness allows.
mhm,
Does that make sense, what I'm saying? Yeah. So It's not a question of someone more smart or less smart. It's a consciousness level of the soul spirit of your evolution as such. Yeah. Um, so you can have, for example, someone that's been through all the best schools, read all the best books, all the best universities. It's got all the things. Yeah, everything. But their consciousness level is sort of here. Their academic level is up there, and sometimes some people, not everyone, some people on certain levels like that, even if they're on the same platform, they will not understand each other. Yeah, because the academic level sometimes does not want to understand the flower people like me. Like, you're a flower person. What do you know? You don't have any of the academic stuff. You don't talk like us. So, but other people on high academic levels understand and embrace that. And that's, I think, when we do beautiful conversations like this.
Yeah.
Yeah, the comprehension that we each bring into the conversation becomes a group energy that is at a higher level than any of us could achieve as individuals. But the more people in a group doesn't necessarily make that group more knowledgeable. And figuring out how we can function as individuals within groups while representing humanity means that if a single individual has an objection to what's going on, at the very least, we have a responsibility to hear out that objection and see if it can be refuted to the point where the person understands and comes along.
Mm,
That's called consensus.
mm,
And we supposedly live in a consensus reality, but nobody ever asked me if I agreed to what's going on now, and I don't.
yeah.
The level of consensus that says if I'm the only one who has an objection and everybody else agrees except for me, if I can bring one person in agreement with me and not the group consensus, then we should talk it out until we come back to consensus. But if I'm just being a bonehead and can't get a single person to agree with me, I can get written off as a bonehead for the purposes of that decision making, and it would be okay. The
Mm,
current form of governance that we live under first selects a group of elites and then allows them to lose touch with the consensus reality. And we have gotten to the point where I'm not going to bother to go out and vote unless there's somebody local who's seeking a position that affects me that I already know and support. And then I will register to vote and vote for them. And then just as quickly burn my voter registration card. But then you hear some of these people now talking like our esteemed president saying that what's coming over the southern border from Mexico into the United States are electorate members. And that's not even close to the reality of what it requires for you to qualify for legitimately being an elector in your area. There's residency requirements. There's the requirement that you actually have to be a citizen of this nation. But then that word citizen is a trap also, because you can be an agent of this nation You can be a member of this nation, and each of those words have a different legal legitimacy that defines what you are. So, one of my colleagues who knows the law is currently working under his standing to change his designation to the point where instead of a debtor, he is a creditor within the nation. And that's all legal mumbo jumbo, and it's all well and good. But if every one of us was sovereign and had to be consulted on decisions that affected us, and we used proxy to select people that we trust, who can select people that they trust, so that in every case, whoever represented us at any level was listening to the individual humans and their objections and solving them via the consensus process, my guess is we could turn the whole thing around overnight. It would be that quick. People would get it. They'd agree because they get more than they get now. But the propaganda that we have to listen to from the voices who we were told to trust and taught to trust, from our parents who were really educated in the same system we were, but with a different insight as to what that education's purpose was, and a specific time constant. Because if you look at the education system, at least the way it is in the United States, there's elementary school, middle school, and high school. And the people in elementary school, by the time they get to be fifth graders, know all the kids younger than them, and they go off to middle school and they know all the kids in middle school because when they were younger in elementary school, these were the kids that were around. And the same process is repeated in high school, and the same process is repeated in college. And so you've essentially got a 7-year bubble, 3 years behind you, 3 years ahead of you, and the year that you graduated high school in. And that bubble is the container that everybody thinks through as it moves along the timeline. And the bubbles morph so that by 14 years, 2 bubbles worth, they're teaching almost the exact opposite of what you had learned. And so, in a way, the system pits parents against their children in such a way that the grandparents and your children get along fabulously on a similar wavelength, and you get along with your grandparents and grandchildren
That's true.
on another similar wavelength, and everybody's forced into conflict because they keep shifting what they're teaching and the orientation to that information. And that doesn't even involve social engineering, which takes place not only through the schools, but through the social media. And most important, through these stupid devices that seem to have everybody's attention 24/7 now. If you turn off your device so that you do not want to be disturbed, and somebody tries to call you who has something important to say, by the time you've gotten back to them, they've already gone through all the angst of wondering if you're okay because your phone's not on. And I have tried very, very hard to be not responsive when it notifies me of something. But the problem is that if you want to do something, you have to be notified that it's time to do it. If Haris and I wanted to attend Grizz's show and we weren't told that Grizz will be on air in a half an hour, and then a half an hour later be notified, oh, we're going live, nobody would know to ever go to the show. I don't announce these meetings here, and we weren't going to be live, except that I wanted to capture that water conversation because it was interesting and novel. And when things are novel, I'm at the point now where I want to capture them on video and get to the point of editing and creating a package that is both entertaining and educational, thought provoking, but answering questions about the basic reality of the topic. And Harris, at some time I want to talk to you in depth on branding because the concept of what Grizz is doing with his branding is totally duplicatable. But the
Mhm.
way Grizz has set it up, if I wanted to duplicate something like he's doing, there's no resources flowing to Grizz for me to get his help, and he's already provided infinite help. But I'm copying an idea, and in this day and age, copying has been equated with theft. And copying is not theft, it never is. But damn, they don't have. Do they have a patent system that insists you can't copy something that somebody has patented? And when we were listening to Terrence Howard talking to Joe Rogan, and he's so proud of his patents that he can use what was created by Google and Facebook and all the other social medias that used his patented idea without paying him now gives him free license to use what they came up with. The only thing is, it reinforces the whole thing about ownership of the government of the people, ownership of the corporation and the workers, and it is to the point where actors behaving badly at the top rungs of the reward system have blown the system up to the point where it's not useful anymore. Now, over the weekend, because of the nature of things, I got onto X, and so I will be doing X streams. They're not called streams, they've got another name that I can't remember because it repurposes a word that I use for another meaning. And it just doesn't stick what they're called. Harris, you mentioned it earlier in the
You mean
show.
the spaces?
Spaces.
Yeah.
Why in the world is it called an X space? Oh, because SpaceX is Elon Musk's company. So let's name it in a way so that we can promote Elon Musk. But isn't the whole fiscal and financial system a fraud perpetrated by the banksters in order to be able to print the money, loan it at interest, and then spend it on all the property in the world? I asked a politician friend of mine how he would fix the problem, and the first thing he came up with was Citizens United. Neither one of you is American, but Citizens United was a Supreme Court case in which the Supreme Court decided that corporations are people and have the rights of people. But I always learned that rights came with responsibilities, and corporations have no responsibilities like we people have. And even worse, now that that decision is almost 30 years old, they've got legitimate priority over humans that are younger than when the corporation was founded. So, right now, not only do we have a no go legal system, it's based on corporation law, maritime law, things that we don't even have standing in because from the time we were issued a birth certificate, we have 7 years. And if we haven't responded to them by the time we're 7, and one day we are designated as lost at sea, and they own our assets in holding for us, and all sorts of other fictions that if you go into a legal courtroom under economic corporation law, you are already subservient to the system and in agreement with what they say and the languaging that they use. So they've seeded the population with a whole lot of words that don't mean anything in relation to what the legal word is, just like an X space has nothing to do with an outer space or the
Yeah.
space that I have to arrange so that I have room to work within my trailer. The whole thing is insane. And there is no recourse to it within the system. And we'll see where that goes because it is obvious to many, many, many people that what we have now is a creative fiction that isn't working.
Yeah. Um, a couple of thoughts there, Doc. I believe the one of the ways forward is to move beyond being only a consumer, let's say, and try to at least become the so-called consumer, like someone that consumes, but also produces uh, content, as we are doing right now in this, let's say, space. And the other thing is to try to at least push the envelope a bit forward. So you said before about branding, and I would be very interested to have that talk with you. Just a small comment on that. They say that art it's a form of a meta language because it extends beyond language. So I believe branding, in the sense of what we are doing with Cream and VNA, I believe that it is a meta language. So it is like a critique, let's say, and on what is going on. So it is doing it in a visual. It adds basically to the visual discourse, while at the same time it pushes the envelope forward. So that's my take on that.
I'm branding us now, and the bubble in the around the bunny in the corner is also a form of branding.
Of
As
course.
to your first point, I no longer consider myself a human being. I am a human doing.
Okay, it's
And
good.
so instead of just being, I'm doing. And it takes an effort to do what we do. But if that effort is given honestly and you believe in what you're doing, your success is measured in terms outside of the existing reality that we find ourselves in. So if you do good work that's meaningful to you, you find yourself with the opportunity to do more good work in a better circumstance because you've materialized it in a universe that is forward future from where we are now, but behind us in forms of relaying the same narrative.
Mhm.
And so if you take the entire scale from the Planck size to as large as we can imagine on an infinite scale, the zero and the infinity are the same point connected together in a Mobius strip, something that goes around in a figure eight and then comes back on the opposite side of the ribbon that creates that figure eight. And so, as above, so below seems to govern. And it's my thought that humans are fractal and that consciousness is a human feature, so that at the level of the individual water atom, there's consciousness and it believes it's in human form. At the planetary level, with the Earth and other planets in this solar system and other systems, that planetary level is a fractal of humanity, and the conscious form is human. Now, on things that are in our sphere that are conscious visually and definitely not human, cats, dogs, they believe that their species is the human, that that species also has a collective fractal consciousness, but the distance between fractal consciousness is that multiple consciousnesses, in order to be fractal to each other, must be at least more than three distance away from each other within the same system. And more than three is pi, 3.14. So that, for instance, within the Fibonacci, 1 and 5 are four distance away. So you could have a fractal of 1 manifesting at 5, but usually it'll be even farther away. 5 is the minimum. On the other hand, if you start at 3, a group like we are now in, the next closest fractal form, 5, 8, 13, are all too close. It would be 21. And there's no maximum requirement for fractal nature, but there is a minimum requirement for it. And there's different fractal streams that do different things. The idea that our intelligence is different from a cat or a dog is nonsense. It can't be. Consciousness is consciousness. And if it comes from the water, because water has memory, then that makes atomic and molecular scale the scale where consciousness is generated. And if you go with the currently taught chemistry periodic table, you have a very linear world like the one we have now. If you go with Walter Russell's, which is based on a wave, which is what we base our theories of light on, theories of sound on, throw a rock into a pond, and what do you see? Waves coming out from where the rock hit the pond. My guess is that it doesn't come from water, it comes from something smaller. And whatever is smaller than water, I don't know, because we haven't really envisioned down that small except to create the Planck constant, which is what, 10 to the minus 36th? But I don't know. This is where I really appreciate that the physics world allowed Nassim Haramein to play in their world. Because when I met Nassim back in 2008, he was very angry because he knew what he was talking about and the academics wouldn't listen to him because he didn't have a degree. Now I look at Nassim and his presence on the internet, and he's well respected and he seems much happier. And so there's definitely something to the polarity with humans of choosing to take the light side or be on the dark side. And it really doesn't have to do anything with the concept of the force that George Lucas has managed to create such a meme that whenever you talk about light and dark, it immediately goes to a force. It's funny. There was a woman who wrote a book called The Field back in the late 2000s. And I initially thought she was talking about force fields, but she wasn't. She was talking about just what fields are from a biological perspective. Um, yeah, her name's not coming back to me, but it will sometime in the course of the conversation. Or Harris will look it up on Google because he does that for almost everything that is
Yeah.
said.
Yeah.
Um, One of the problems I have with biology is that because I was taking a chemical perspective to biology and knew my chemistry, I didn't want to have to mix the ideas of chemistry with the ideas of biology. And when similar people were talking about what I'm doing, I tend to not watch them and ignore them totally. An example would be Bruce Lipton, who I think is a fantastic researcher, but I won't look at his stuff at all because I heard part of a talk of his once that was too close to what I was thinking, and I didn't want to influence my thinking of the chemistry by including biology where it didn't belong because chemistry doesn't have a biology, but biology certainly relies on chemistry. The same thing would be true of physics and chemistry. If I was a physicist, that would prevent me from using chemistry as an explanation because the basis of chemistry is subatomic physics. The particles, electron, proton, neutron. But then the physicists started getting creative and creating things like dark matter and quarks and black holes. And I think it was seeded. I think that scientific writers like Isaac Asimov and before him Jules Verne, H.G. Wells were from modern times who have gone back in history and created a historical niche to create memes that would be accepted as truths in this reality now. But this reality now is ever morphing because the narrative takes place on, as Carl Sagan would say, billions and billions of timelines, all of which are related, constantly merging with each other, and fractally based on a narrative. So that there's no reason to think that everybody in this reality now is on the same timeline, but we're all in the same narrative. And so somebody who's not privy to this conversation might be in a different form of this timeline. And the 26,000 year timeline, the long cycle of the Mayans, follows the zodiac pretty nicely. So that every 26,000 years, we on this earth reach this point in history where it has essentially stalled in a time barrier And I think most everybody in this population has lived on an Earth that has since exploded and died, and is on this Earth because the consciousness knew to abandon that Earth, and that we will be slid in replacement into the 26,000 year cycle, so that this space and time in this narrative will happen again 26,000 years from now. Now, I chose the 20,000 year cycle just based on the Mayan, but it could be an even bigger cycle, or it could be a much smaller cycle. But it's all normalized into human existence. So a human lifetime living from 0 to 80 could take a microsecond, it could take 80 years, it could take the whole 26,000 year long cycle. And we couldn't tell from being human, because relative to other humans, we're in a 24-hour day in which we sleep anywhere from 5 to 12 hours, wake up, and there's not even a reason to think we're in the same timeline we were on yesterday. Maybe when we're doing significant cutting edge work, we're on the 26,000 year lifetime. But when we're trying an experiment to see what's right, we're on a microsecond timeline. So that over the course of existence, we've repeated that microsecond timeline so many times that the proper answer has come out to allow the advance of bigger, longer timelines to continue to work.
Doc, as a small point, sorry, Lizzie. Um, what about the concept of the half-life?
Of the
Half-life,
half life,
yeah.
one of the things Terrence Howard said that bothered me was that the half lives of different elements were different
Hmm.
depending on how near or far you are from the sun.
Yeah.
And that violates what I know about nuclear chemistry, which is that half life is a reversible random generation. But I don't claim to be correct in my knowledge in any way. I just claim to be consistent to the chemistry as I know it. And Walter Russell blew my mind first. And then Jerry Pollock blew my mind. And so both of them are totally right in my mind. And taking what I learned and making it fit Walter Russell's wave chemistry instead of particle chemistry, or Pollock's concept of water, which is what I started with when we were talking with the structured water and that
Hmm.
for the basis of this conversation, not necessarily for the basis of how water really works, because I think water really works on a human consciousness where what we call H2O is actually a little human being playing out this narrative on a different cycle. And there's a lot more water molecules than there are human beings. But human beings are large sacks of water. And so there's no difference between anybody's internal water from anyone else's internal water. If there was, we couldn't have blood transfusions. It would instantly kill somebody to put in a different water in that sense. So when we talk about water, there are ways we can make water different. We could make it deuterium water and increase the atomic weight or the molecular weight of the atoms. But in reality, I do not think our model currently is correct. And that one of the things we have to do is go back and look at everything that we thought we knew and question it again from a standpoint of, okay, if this is true in chemistry, is it true in sociology? Is it true in biology? Is it true in English literature? And that as we find fundamental truths in different areas, by analogy, we can make them fundamental truths that we can use as a basis set for moving forward. But the motto is if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Because so many times you see somebody trying to build something better and breaking what we had. And in science, that's coming up with a new hypothesis that shatters the old hypothesis, but doesn't have the breadth to carry out into other fields.
Mhm.
And if I shatter somebody's illusion of how something works, I at least want to give them something to chew on to replace what I just shattered. But that's not the way the world works right now. And we have a lot of shattered people out there.
Mm. Well, they need to kind of, instead of looking outward all the time, learn to look a little bit within.
Yes.
You cannot live your personal life by always being focused out there. To do with all these um, groups of wonderful people you spoke of, Bruce Lipton, Nassim Aramain, and all these other amazing gentlemen and people you spoke of. Um, I have great admiration for all of them. Again, I don't necessarily speak the same lingo, but I understand some of it. Um, uh, the time thing, I think, sometimes I see time almost like a rubber band. You know, it does that, or the breath of life. It expands and contracts. Yeah. Um, and when you expand and contract, in that contraction moment is the now. And what to say to that? Because my brain is very tired now, so you probably can hear how slow I am. Uh, all we have is now, and now is always here.
Yes.
Always.
Unfortunately, we can give big hugs virtually
Yeah.
in the now.
Because, big hug comes from the heart, yeah?
Yes.
From our heart mind coherence. So you're always being hugged. I'm a great hugger because I believe in true divine love, which reaches out onto everyone. And I do think that now is always here. Past, present, and future. Accumulated into the now. Uh, we carry memories and experience from the past into now. We are always trying to create the future in the now. Sometimes we time travel out of body experiences into different, uh, past or present or future. But the now it's a precious moment, and I think we as a species need to honor that now and make that now a better moment um, for the self and for everyone, and honor the fact that even though we are one species, um, the human being species, uh, the beautiful differences amongst us is to be honored. Yes, we have a body. Yes, we have blood. A few different varieties of blood, different beings with different knowledge and different experience, different places. But we have to learn respect. We have to know that we cannot, should not try to control out there. The only thing we should try to learn is from within, and the knowledge that comes from within. The making the better world comes from within. You cannot create a better world by trying to change this person, this country, that country. You started from within. You started with yourself. Improve yourself.
As
Love.
Michael Jackson said, I'm talking to the man in the mirror.
Absolutely, absolutely. And those things are important. And if we have love and compassion, it has to start at home. Yeah, home. Yeah, and spread it outward. So if we all want to make a better world, it has to start there. We can have all the knowledge in the world if we don't put that knowledge into our heart, mind, coherence, and look after it. Uh, then we keep making messes, we keep making messes.
Well, we
Uh,
do keep making messes. We're
mm,
very good at that as a species.
mm. But also we learn. And I actually have faith and I do believe that there are so many good people out there right now, in this now moment, uh, doing the good thinking, the good deed, the good feeling, the good prayer, the good thought. Um, Far more than we actually realize. And we do get to see and hear far more about the negative than the positive.
And that's
Therefore,
probably deliberate.
yeah, so therefore it looks totally out of balance. But I think it's more a perception than the true thing. And again, I'm not a scholar, and a lot of scholar people, and
You're not a scholar, you're a thinker. And
uh,
thinkers are ahead of scholars because the scholars are too busy trying to integrate what other people think.
mm, mm. I listen to everyone with respect, and then by listening, like I was listening to both of you, and you make so much sense, and I listen because I'm trying to learn. Um, I don't try to assimilate that who you are. I'm trying to learn and include to that who I am the bits that I find acceptable into me. Yeah, that I dare find of value because every one of you has got beautiful pearls of wisdom to share. So thank you.
You're welcome. And she's talking to every one of the viewers, too.
Yes, absolutely.
If you're watching this, you're thinking about things and you're part of our solution, not part of the inherent problem, which is just a good excuse to get to a better solution.
Mm. As I've been quite unwell, have noticed more and more uh, that I've been looking within, you know, and had to use a lot of humor because of my situation not being as easy as that. So I had to use a lot of humor to survive and to be able to self study, yeah, and to capture my own trigger points, what's triggering me and why. And sometimes the trigger point comes from the past memories, experiences, and now something is happening, and the trigger point triggers me. And when you start watching being the watcher of self, then you can heal those points. Yeah. Say, oh, hold on a minute. I'm reacting now in anger and fear and this, that, and the other, and I want to lash out. But the thing that I'm doing that to is this big. So where does it come from? So when you go and try and find a point of origin, then you can heal from the point of origin to now. Yeah. With loving care and attention. And when you do that with yourself, you actually are creating ripples uh, towards the outer world of healing too.
And also the parallel timelines that follow the narrative, but at the same time simultaneously, so that if we make decision A, decision B gets made, and maybe it doesn't matter, they merge back. Maybe they run parallel for a while until we see what happens and merge back. Maybe it really matters significantly, and this takes a tangent, and us in that conscious form remain on that conscious wavelength and let go of the one that we were on and become NPC, non player character.
I'm working on it gently. um, as you probably see from the beginning till now, I'm slowed down. I've gone on a slow down, but I'm working on it.
And
I'm
if
working on
you would
healing.
like to drop off so that you can go to sleep, given how late it is,
I
thanks
have
for
to.
being here.
I have to because I'm still on the mend. But it's been an absolute pleasure.
And I'm
And
sending you love and healing vibrations.
thank you.
And at some point, we'll get together physically and exchange healing modalities.
Yeah, yeah. There'll be a party. Thank
Thank
you.
you, Lizzy. Thank you.
Thank you.
So let me say thanks to the audience and log off. Harris, stick around and we can have a conversation. This has
Yeah.
been Dr. Lenny Time. You've listened to The New Way. Today we started without introduction, but I think we had a fascinating conversation. Thanks to Lizzy, thanks to Harris, thanks to everybody watching now and in the future. Be well.